Hey guys, I just wanted to share a video with you. Um, just some thoughts that I have. I know it says in Hebrews, let's press on to maturity. Um, I think really how many believers in the body really allow God to show the areas of their heart that's still operating in woundedness, from, the past issues. Growing up, I mean, I had said in many videos that we're not born in this world without hurt, because hurt people hurt people. So the family that we were born into, they were hurt people. So I don't want to say that they do the best they can. Maybe some people do, maybe some don't, maybe some just don't care. And so with those different viewpoints and attitudes, here we are, we're born into each of these families and we receive hurt. I don't know anyone that is born into a family that doesn't receive some kind of hurt, whether it's rejection or physical abuse or sexual abuse, whatever it will be. So we're born into these families, we receive hurt, and, you know, we have coping mechanisms, we have defense mechanisms that we operate out of. Why? So we're not going to receive any more hurt. I'd sent in some videos that, I was, sexually abused by a so-called friend of the family. And so when, you know, you deal with that, for me personally, it makes me uncomfortable. Like, for example, going in a guy's bathroom, it's hard for me to do that. I remember going to this Catholic camp. My sister and her ex-husband, who is now, he passed on, but they sent me to this Catholic camp. And I recall the guys' showers. All the guys just took a shower naked, and I'm like really uncomfortable, you know. But it's something I had to do, so I dealt with it the best I could. But when you're abused, it's hard to move on from that. And I remember speaking with this supposed Christian counselor, and he was more or less telling me to get over it. And it's like, so with him telling me that, I was like, I can't go to you anymore, because how can I share my difficulties with somebody that just tells me to get over it? You can't get over something. You, as a Christian counselor or a counselor in general, know that there's various steps that need to be taken for somebody to deal with issues. So, um, so we're born into these families, we receive hurt, and so we react from the hurt. We're dealing with baggage now. So we go into the church, we come to Jesus, we go into the church, and we deal with our brothers and sisters, you know, through our baggage. We see through the knothole of our pain. And I think of, I looked up knothole one day and I saw these pictures of these different animals in a tree. It's like a circular cutout from the tree to where these animals are in there. It's like, uh, I guess it was an owl, and I think there was a squirrel or whatever, something related to, that family of animals. So they're in that knothole of the tree. And I'm thinking, that's what we do. We live out of the knothole of our pain. So we see things with our perception of that pain. We look at, people, we look at situations, and, if, we're rejected like I was, growing up, you start seeing things from the eyes of rejection. I've had the earliest I remember my dad never went to any of my ball games. He never went to my graduation. He never went to the music recitals that I had, at school. So that could bring rejection, like in self-worth issues. You would think, well, I'm not worth seeing. I'm not worth, you know, being congratulated. So people can look at that situation and be like, well, I'm going to be bitter toward him because he did this. But when we take a step back, and this is a rabbit trail, with understanding, with God's understanding, he helps me to see why my dad the way he was. He was a hurt man himself. And just because my dad didn't go to my ball games or whatever didn't make it, it didn't mean that he didn't love me. He loved me in the way that he knew how. So, he never went to my games, and so rejection came from that. I recall one night when I was 14, you know, I was telling him because he was an alcoholic and he was drinking, and he would get verbally abusive and he could be physically abusive when he drank. And so I was telling him, Dad, you really need to stop drinking. And, being a 14-year-old, you know, you don't think about what you say. And so I don't know how I came off to him, but he got mad and he came up and he started choking me. And so I called my sister up and I asked if I could stay with her. She said no. So rejection came from that. My sister doesn't want me. So, you know, growing up with my sister, it also added to rejection because she didn't want her brother around. There were just a couple of times that I remember my sister asked me to go with her. And one of those times was an accident where a Mack truck hit me and her friend on her bike. And my sister was in shock from that. And the other time I remember driving with my sister to Burger King together because I think she used to work there. So, the other times my sister didn't want me around. And, I guess in some ways I could understand, well, you don't want your little brother around you when you're out with your friends. There was one night where she was with her friends in her room and I wanted to be with her. Looking at it from the heart, I wanted to be around my sister. I love my sister, but she didn't want her brother around. And so from rejection, I got a bottle of soda and I poured it on her and she kicked me out of her room. I mean, it's not a right thing to do, but that's what rejection does. That's how I dealt with it. And so I recall another instance when I was 14, when we moved to a certain part of Massachusetts from, I think it was Maryland. We had to stay with our aunt, and she was an older aunt. She was in her 90s, so she couldn't clean her place like I'm sure she wanted to. So her place was dusty, and it was majorly dusty, and I was allergic to dust. So I stayed in the room, and it got to the point to where it was hard for me to breathe. And I went into the hospital, and I was there, I think, for a week. And I guess they gave me oxygen or whatever it was, and medication to deal with that. And I guess that's when I was put on like Ventolin and stuff, and inhalers. So I I was in that hospital, and my mother and sister worked during the day, and here I'm alone for the entire day. And so I was stuck with my thoughts, you know, just how I was, what I was thinking. I was thinking that nobody cares about me. And the devil, I think, worked at that time. He was putting these thoughts in my mind. And when I agreed with him, the bad, the thoughts came, and it got to the point where I'm not worth anything to them. They don't care about me. They don't love me. And so from that, I was operating out of rejection. And so they came to see me, and I didn't want to see them because I was hurt. And so I locked myself in the bathroom, and this nurse had me get out. And so I ran down the hall. Why did I do that? you think you got to dissect what you're feeling at that time. Yeah, I wanted them to tell me that they loved me and that they cared about me and they were thinking about me. But was my reaction to the rejection I was feeling. And so they had to have a nurse sit with me, because they couldn't trust me being by myself. So, growing up through life, all these different experiences mixed together, you create, I believe, a viewpoint. And you start seeing, what people say, what people do around you from that knothole of pain. You know, with romantic relationships, I felt like I couldn't have one because of the way I looked. And so I felt all women are the same way. I'm not going to have any relationships because I was obese. So, you start thinking that all girls think that way. All girls feel that way about you. And so, when we come to Christ, we are not to live in that knothole of pain anymore. We're to operate as a new creation. And so we have to go back to our past, to our woundedness. We have to allow God to heal us so that we can move on. What do you want to take with you on a trip? Do you want to take baggage or do you want to take luggage? We have to get rid of our baggage if we're going to move on with Christ. So whatever hurts that you're experiencing, what you're dealing with currently, where did it come from? Can you dissect it? Can you trace your hurts to the beginning? And then can you, receive God's healing with those? Can you forgive those who need to be forgiven? Forgiveness is a big thing when it comes to Jesus. If we don't forgive, we're not going to be forgiven. And so, if somebody's not around anymore that caused you pain, pretend that they're there and express all the hurt that you're feeling. And at the end of it, say, I forgive you. And it may take several times. I did that with a few different people. I remember doing it with my mother. She forgave all those that hurt her in the past, and she felt like God had torn out of her heart all the pain. So it will take doing that, to move on with your hurt. Is the person still alive? Can you go to them and work issues out with them? Work out forgiveness, whatever it is. But as long as we're getting into that place to where we're not working out of our hurt anymore, but we're working out of healing, we're working out of being a new creation so that we can progress on with God. Because how are we going to progress on with Him? How can we do what we need to do if we're still being chained by our past? This is the only way that we can get on to maturity. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you for taking the time to watch.